It's not because Christianity recommends, X, Y, and Z, but it's through Christianity that we become great.
They condemn racism, but they only condemn whites who happen to.
It's not because Christianity recommends, X, Y, and Z, but it's through Christianity that we become great.
They condemn racism, but they only condemn whites who happen to be racist.
And in a way, God is just whatever it is that keeps our civilization going.
White people are constantly being told that race is a social construct. It's not even biological.
And you think, where do you belong? Yeah. You belong in a shopping mall. You know, there's nothing to you other than that.
Hello, everybody. I'm here finally. Thank you for your patience. As usual, OBS is a stubborn fiend, and it took us a while to wrangle it down. I had a bunch of audio problems, and well, that's behind us now. We're focused now on the show. We got a good one for you. I've got the Great Order here, and the Great Order. He has a YouTube channel. He's also the co-host of The After Party with No White Guilt. And so, and he does his own videos. He's got his own website. So let's jump over and say hello. Jared, how are you?
Hello. Hopefully, I'm sounding like a human being and not a robot. Is that so?
Absolutely.
All right.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for having me on your show. It's great to be here. First time that we're talking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. It is the first time, and I watched a video of yours called The White New Deal. And so since we're kind of late, let's get right into it. Basically, this was a video where you're talking about ways that we can sort of hold politicians' feet to the fire regarding the representation of white Americans, of people of European descent. And you've got, I think, 7 points in there. You were not the sole creator of this, but you worked with some other people. And well, we can go through a couple of them, actually, but one of the big ones is has to do with the justice system and how there needs to be equality under the law, and all people, all races need to get treated equally. And so we see in the legal system there are these cases where our people aren't able to get representation. There's also censorship happening, and so I'm gonna pull up the list here. But why don't you talk to people about why you wanted to make this video?
Well, yes, it was the first 3 points were written by a Twitter account, White Student T. It's just all one word, at White Student T. And this is not someone that I know personally. I wasn't in contact with before, but I believe he had responded to a thread that I was involved in. I'd have to go back and look, although it's probably buried now. And he wrote the first 3 points, and I was immediately taken by them. I thought it was intriguing. And I suggested an outline for what became the latter 4 points. So then there were 7 in total. He mostly constructed the verbiage. I just tweaked a few things. And I said to him, hey, I'm thinking of doing a video. I want to read these and say a little something about it. And he said, absolutely. I'm trying to speak to him on one of my own streams as well. I think that would be appropriate, and he seems up for it. So we might be doing that maybe on the weekend. We'll see. But I basically do the video where I read the 7 points, and then I speak how I feel about them a little bit and put them in context. And then I read them again at the end, just so that people know what they're about. And yeah, it's essentially, as you said, we can get into this whole debate because obviously there was some kickback about, well, what does this mean? You just give up your power? I mean, you're saying not to vote. And then, of course, people debating about, well, does your vote really matter or not? We could talk a little about that. I have some ideas about how to contextualize that, but you have to remember the main vote is for yourself. It's for taking a stand as a person of European descent, and it's to galvanize us. And it's to get, there are people in our circles who really responded well to this. I had a lot of other content creators comment on the video and share it. And in the first few days, a lot of people really gave a lot of good feedback and were energized by it. And that's the kind of response that I was hoping for. And that is the kind of energizing that we want to see. We have to remember outside of our circles, I think the circumstances of the current society and the craziness that we see out there, it's certainly waking people up. But there are a lot of people who, even if you begin to tiptoe up to some of the things that we talk about regularly on channels like this, we're used to it. We're acclimated to it. It doesn't phase us. But some things that might seem milquetoast to us really are off-putting to still a lot of people out there. Now, again, there are circumstances conspiring to help people begin to throw off those shackles. And so something like this is just one of my contributions and one of the many contributions that many content creators, people writing or making different kinds of media are putting across the bow, putting out there in an attempt to work. I think we need to work with the craziness going on right now, the circumstances that are waking people up naturally. They're seeing the game a little more blatantly, a little more clearly. And so we need to fire these shots to give people strong presentations and strong language, because a lot of people aren't used to thinking in these terms. Forget even the terms of how the language is written in these 7 points. Just the very fact that you are taking the point of view of arguing as a white person for white people, just the frame of it is, again, shocking to some people, or at least a little bit uncomfortable. There's different degrees of it. So the more that we have people, and all different kinds of people of European descent, who can stand firm, stand tall, and speak confidently, and give people perspectives and language, be a good example, not back down, but just be somewhat of a good character as well. Just be it all around, well presented, be a good character, not be this Hollywood cutout, this trope of, the Neanderthal racist. Then we're going to work with the circumstances, and we're going to help bring more people to this.
Yeah. I like that. But the funny thing about these points is, which I'll read in a second, is that basically Trump would not be able to get elected if we were abiding by this, because unfortunately the guy has not been standing up for our people. Forget about even naming white people explicitly, which in the State of the Union he named just about every other group.
That's one of the things that inspired this.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I do think we can take sort of a playbook out of AIPAC and the Israel lobby, and I'm not completely sold, to be honest, on the name, the White New Deal, because I think boomers are going to think, oh, New Deal's socialist bad.
Oh, sure. I mean, of course, it was just, it's a way to get attention on the internet because
it's catchy.
Of the Green New Deal.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're not
very
married,
appropriate.
Not married to anything like that. As you know, as a content creator, you have to name things and be clever and stick out. So the name is invoked more in that.
Sure. Yeah, and but I mean, would it be equally bad to say like the white lobby? Because while we're not specifically putting money to try to buy politicians, we are trying to put political pressure and to say that there's a hard line, as you say, a line in the sand, which, if you don't abide by these things, these are a minimum. And, immigration is actually not in this list, which might surprise some people because that's something you hear all the time on our side about. But I think that's actually a good thing, because
it's included in point 4, though, generally.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's not named. You're correct. It's not named. But 4 is put forth policies and legislation that strengthens our population while encouraging legal recourse against any person or institution seeking to inhibit these efforts. Now, obviously, that's extremely broad, But again, this is just to get people thinking in a certain direction, inspire more conversation, have people come up with their own ideas. I'm not a politician. I'm not someone in a position of that kind of leadership. But this is more of an experiment to galvanize people and to throw out like a what if. What would it look like? What does it sound like to take our own side and draw that line in the sand? And
Yes.
immigration can certainly be couched under that point.
Okay, fair enough. So let's start with point number 1. All right. So you say any politician seeking the votes of European descended peoples, sometimes called whites for the sake of ease, which that's kind of an interesting question in itself. Like, do you say European? Do you say white? But we can come back to that. So
Yeah, in America, most Americans they're not going to respond to the word European.
right.
It was more just to get that out right away. That's a little preamble because we have all of these nonsense arguments about, well, who is white? When they want to obfuscate that, of course they know full well who we are when it comes time to dole out the guilt and all of that. As I say, when I kind of
And if
speak about it on the video.
push them hard enough, like once you say that, they're gonna say, "Oh, this based Somalian Nigerian who just came to England last year. Well, they're just as white and just as European as you, so you can never win with these
European
things."
descended. Yeah. I know they'll move the goalpost, but yeah, hopefully most sane people they'll understand what that means. So
Yeah,
at least
we shouldn't have to respond to this. This is a ridiculous claim meant to trip us up. Okay, let's go on. Number 1, ensure that laws regarding racial bias and hate crime are applied to any attacks directed at our population. Number
Right.
2, measure the level of access to all schools, scholarship programs, employment, government jobs, and mandate proportionate access to them, although we will eventually seek to significantly revise ethnically based hiring and freedom of association laws.
Yeah, one thing that occurred to me when I was thinking about this is the whole idea of a nation, and this is something that's spoken again a lot about in our circles, is would you need a lot of freedom of association laws? Would you need a lot of discrimination laws? Would you need diversity officers in corporations and companies with all these codes about hiring and firing? I mean, isn't the very presence of these laws, of these statutes, and beyond just laws, the softer laws of our social codes and what is considered polite behavior and what isn't, all of the increasing law legislation around that, would that be necessary in what really a nation, coming from those root words related to words like natal, would mean? I mean, don't you think the very presence of these laws is telling in their own way?
Like, are you talking about the Section 8 housing and how they're trying to force people together?
Yeah, that could certainly be included in it. I'm thinking of, I don't know if this is federal or it's state. I've heard the number 15, but I don't have I don't have an exact factoid to give you. But I believe I'd heard, at least in some states, that if you and I started a business, Matthew, and we got over 15 employees, at that point, we would become subject to certain discrimination practices in hiring, and there'd be some kind of watchful eye beginning to observe our hiring practices. Now, in a nation that's supposed to have enough tying its people together, enough that they're on the same page, why would you need something like that? I mean, at this point, the question kind of answers itself. At this point, America's obviously an empire. I mean, maybe you could argue it was a nation at some point, but it's a multicultural empire. That's the reality of the situation. And these are the fruits of having to manage something like that.
Well, yeah, and the constitutionalists, they are completely ignorant of this fact, or they willfully ignore it, because they want to just think that, laws can be applied irrespective of whoever is in the country. And that would be nice in a ideal world, but that's not how things work, especially when we have these institutional structures that are just constantly riling people up and trying to, get a rise out of the minority population to make them more hostile towards white people. With these hoaxes, the Jesse Smollett thing, just imagine if that hadn't been revealed. Where would we be?
And there are people acting like it's still real. This is this whole like Emperor's New Clothes thing. I mean, they're just trying to will it into reality.
Exactly.
They're acting like that is a legitimate thing, and they'll continue to do so. But it goes to, I mean, this is why, because we can't have a definition of what the nation is, and then when the president gets up to one of the president's primary jobs is to protect the border. There's a boundary to anything. Anything in life that has any kind of meaning, there's a boundary that distinguishes it. You can apply that to all sorts of things, but in a nation, of course, it's its physical borders and it's the way of life contained therein. And one of the primary roles in our society, in the United States, of a president is to protect that way of life and protect the physical borders, what is inside and outside of that fold of what makes the nation. But there's been this con job about people's perception about what the nation even is over the last century, so that most people, it's like trying to stand on a quicksand. You're not standing on a solid base of what even the sense of this nation is. And so it becomes very difficult to even talk about protecting it when you can't even define it. Because I know I was reading something, actually, I'll pull this up. Earlier today, I was on AmRen, and I was reading about the state of emergency and this whole thing going on. I think this is by Gregory Hood. The article is Trump's immigration policy is the worst of both worlds. And he goes, under federal law 10 U.S.C. 274-284, President Trump could have ordered fence construction without a state of emergency. He was urged to do this by Congressman Mark Meadows. Dissident right podcasters at Fash the Nation also discovered Public Law 85804, which gives the president wide powers to enter into contracts for national defense without regard to the Congress. The defense of the nation is primary, being the commander-in-chief. And I am not primarily a political guy, even though in what I do, of course, there's a time and a place for political commentary. But I don't understand why. I know some people still say that there's a long game being played, and we could even entertain that theory. I say that we have to start standing up for ourselves no matter what, essentially. If he is somehow playing a long game and he had to do all these things behind the scenes, and now Ruth Bader Ginsburg isn't going to be on the Supreme Court for too much longer, pieces are going to come in. I still hear people talking about this. I can't say one way or the other. I'm not here to get up and say, I know what the future is. But even if that is the case, in the best case scenario, we still have to start standing up for ourselves now while we are still a majority and we're getting to a breaking point with everything going on in the culture. And if 6 months from now, somehow magically all the Trump supporters are proven right and he was playing 4D chess all along and our jaws hang open because politicians whose names we know actually get indicted and the power structure changes and they clean out the top floor of the FBI, that's great. Consider that a bonus. Consider that a cherry on top. Mm-hmm. But we have to act as if that's not going to happen, because at this point, most of those people still hanging on to that in the base, unless something like that comes to pass, I feel like they are the victim of an abusive relationship almost. Like, oh, this time I'll go back and it won't be as bad and we'll get along this time. And then you go back into an abusive situation. It's how we're not even acknowledged. We're not even acknowledged in a country that was started by and for European people. And this is absurd. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do something to energize our people and get them thinking about advocating for themselves as themselves.
Yeah, you mentioned 4D chess. I like to tell people that Trump's 4D chess is to get them really pissed at him, and then so that they reject him and elect someone better. That's his 4D chess.
It could be. I will say this: no matter what happens, I think in a broad sense, Trump is serving the same function now. The context is a little different, but the same function now as he did in 2015 and 2016 on the campaign trail. And I think maybe, so far this is the case, certainly, but maybe the legacy of Trump will just be that he opened up the Pandora's box and he wasn't going to be a savior. I remember the night he got elected. My whole thing was, okay, now at least there's a maybe. I wasn't there like, oh, he's the savior, he's going to fix everything. But now maybe someone from outside the establishment got in, and maybe he is who he says he is or presents himself to be. And maybe there will be some things that change. It was always, for me, it was the possibility. That's as far as I allowed myself to go. So I'm not disappointed necessarily. I'm pretty patient, and I'm fine kind of watching things play out.
Well,
But
I will admit that I was one of those people saying like, oh, he just wait, he is ultimately he's buying us time, but it's hard for me to say that those things are true anymore. And I'm willing to admit that I put too much trust in a man. As a Christian, I'm taught that we should not put our trust in men, but put our trust in God. And I think I have some repentance to do, and maybe some other people do too, in that respect. With regards to Trump.
What I was just saying before, just to finish that, is when I was beginning to say the same function now as in 2015, 2016, is that he's still revealing the game. And at this point, it might be to different people. Maybe he is letting, he knows the new Congress is a little out there, and they look like, I was saying earlier on Twitter, some of these new congresswomen, they look like the school board, the administrative board of some like inner city public school. And you think like, this is who you want writing your laws. I mean, he's well aware of that. So maybe, even though you could argue some of his base is being lulled at the rallies and it's finished the wall, and they might think that we're further along than we are, I think another sector of the population is waking up a little bit more and seeing all the pushback. And maybe if the 4D chess thing doesn't work out, and the base who are lulled at the rallies right now, if they start getting impatient again, and then that combines with the newer people who may be a little more center who are waking up now, when those two trajectories converge, then we might see a lot more popular unrest and more reception to the kinds of things that we're talking about with this White New Deal.
Yep. All right, I'm going to continue on with point 3. Provide taxpayer funding and legal services for victims of anti-white crimes.
Even to define anti-white, even to get the term anti-white into the lexicon, which my good friend Jason No White Guilt is talking about on he has a series now where he's kind of holding class on his channel, and that just discussing that term and discussing defeating charges of racism when someone calls you racist. But even that term anti-white, even using the word is revolutionary to most people.
It is. Most people don't know what to do when you say it if they've never heard it for the first time. So, but yeah, like many people are possibly familiar with some of the legislation that goes on around anti-Semitism. Is one of the one of the bigger examples of this. And well, you can be alarmed for one sense in just the First Amendment violations, right? But I think it's HR 672 was in 2017, and then recently they passed something to add language to that, sort of reinforcing their recommitting after the Ilhan Omar debacle went down and people.
Yeah, that just happened exactly.
And that passed 424 to 0. But we're not there yet, and that's why these things are important, because
I don't know if
we need to be thinking
we're going to get there. I mean, there's a power structure behind the scenes that doesn't want this to happen. But my thing is just I think we need to. There's a consciousness awakening, and that is the thing that I'm involved in. I can't sit here and say, what politics are going to look like in 10 years. I mean, nobody really can, but I don't have the studies and the history and the geopolitics, and I don't follow the Washington news day to day. So at least if you're going to make an educated guess, I'm not even your guy to do that. That's not what I'm here to do. But the consciousness raising kind of thing and giving people of European descent back to themselves, realizing that they are even a people, that's even a thing, that there's something that binds them. And yes, there's the ethnicities within that. I'm not saying that, especially to people in Europe, they're not going to think of themselves only as white. They're more closely connected to their ethnicity, their country of origin, and of course, some countries have different peoples and regions within them. But there's still certainly enough of a meaningful distinction of what it means to be of European descent, to be white. And that is the grounds on which we're being attacked now, to make a case for that, and to understand yourself for that, and to look at the history and look at the culture and realize that there's a lot of points of convergence. There's a lot of similarities. Certain things once they hit one place in Europe, they'd spread all over. Certain scientific discoveries or ideas would immediately be spread all over Europe. There was a network that way. Symphonic music is from Spain to Eastern Europe. There's symphonic music. There's that kind of orchestration and composition. There were certainly times in history, like when the Greek island of Chios was attacked by the Muslims, by, I believe, the Ottomans in the 1820s. Delacroix has a painting commemorating this. All of Europe responded and said this is a horror against the European peoples. So there's still always been a sense of something binding the European peoples, and we all do go back to the same tribes that were there on that European continent. So these are the kinds of things you're not taught in school. And these are the kinds of things that people like you and I have to piece together and figure out, and have conversations like this and talk in front of people. And we all learn this together, and we put this back together for ourselves, because it's being hidden from us. And that's a form of abuse. That's a form of violence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to skip over 4 because we touched on that.
Mm-hmm.
Ensure legal recourse for the use of structuring and reporting practices used by media platforms that result in social backlash and attacks on our population.
Yeah, there has to be more liability in the reporting. And one piece of good news I saw today, and if you go to my Twitter, it's not too far down my timeline, is sounds like this Nicholas Salmon's parents found a good lawyer, the kid from the Covington Catholic incident, because he sounds like he's a pit bull, and he's like, we're going after all the media people. He's like, we might take a long time to get to you, but this is going to be a long thing, and he's going after defamation for all of it, and that's a story I think we need to continue following.
So when you say ensure legal recourse, is that sort of like state-funded lawyers, like make sure we get people in there who are at least not anti-white or something? Is that what you mean? Like public defenders kind of?
I mean, and that would be a difficult thing to do in a liberal stronghold if you're given a public defender. But yeah, at least the language is indicating that that you have the right to have someone defend you on that level. I mean, look what happened to the guys in Charlottesville.
Well, and the thing is, we know that people can fundraise if it's a big enough story. It's just that those fundraisers get shut down. So I think, do you have anything on here about like internet platforms and censorship stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I say media platforms, just for the sake of concise language, to me, that includes social media.
Okay.
So media, both in terms of your classic news reporting, but then social media. So the structuring practices, that could just be kicking people off of social media platforms. I mean, that kind of goes with the next point. These two, the 5 flows into 6, because the next point is about denying freedom of speech.
Provide legislation prohibiting any person or entity seeking to deny us our freedom of speech or attempting to conceal any details or evidence of those who carry out attacks against us.
Mhm.
7. Directly challenge multilegalism by passing legislation to criminalize one-sided surveillance and selective enforcement of laws, and nullify any laws that do not offer equal protection to our population, deeming these unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So what do you say to someone who looks at these and says, "Oh, this is this is overly, basically, it would be impossible to enforce all of these things"? Do you think that argument bears any water?
Well, yeah, in the current paradigm, they are, and that's why we have to push for them. The point of these is not to, in some Pollyanna way, think that somehow some guy who's just starting his YouTube presence links up with another guy on Twitter, and they have an idea that this is going to become law. I mean, that would be silly. This is to offer some piece of language, some kind of framework to say these are the kinds of standards that we need to hold politicians to. And now again, we get into the whole conversation with, well, let's say your vote does count. Let's say that it is what it seems to be. Then while we are still in the majority, we need to be waking more people up to take a stand that they will fight on their own behalf. If voting is a fraud and it's never really going to get you anywhere anyway, then if the current trajectory continues and flows, then we're also going to be screwed. And you might as well do something, even if this remains purely a galvanizing, like a lightning rod kind of thing. We need these kinds of dialectics and this kind of language to awaken more people, have that change in consciousness, to then set in motion whatever is going to happen to resist the march of what's been happening, whether, like I said, whether or not voting is legitimate. Because right now, again, let's say it is, what are the Republicans really doing for us anyway? You know, they take for granted that the majority of the white population aren't going to go anywhere else. I mean, they literally say these things, and you see the fruits. Like I try not to guess what's happening in the background. You can always kind of get into this navel gazing about trying to guess what's going on behind the scenes, but look at what's actually going on in front of you. Look at what's actually being manifested in the world. There's nothing that's helping us, and there's no one on our side, and there's no one who can even utter these words. So if we don't do something, if we don't start to do something that is going to show, hey, look, we recognize ourselves as a people, there's something to this, and we need to start advocating for ourselves as a people, nothing is going to change. So at least we need to put something into motion.
Oh, I agree. Well, some of the Republicans are just outright trying to lose. So to say like, "Hey, you're not going to win if you don't get white people," like that's assuming their goal is to win. But yeah, some of them. I mean, some of them will respond to that, for sure, and that is something that needs to happen.
It's a seed being planted. I mean, I know, even if we all called local Congress people and said this, they're not going to change on a dime, because we all know that they have to, take certain pledges to other entities, and there's all kinds of things going on behind the scenes. Like I said, I don't like to guess about what's going on behind the scenes, but there's some things we know. We know full well what's going on, and we know that it's not as cut and dry as, well, if enough of my constituents say it's okay to get up there and say be white, then I guess I'll do it. It's a little harder than that. But it's happened. I mean, it has happened in somewhat recent memory. And if enough people in enough congressional districts did it, at least that would get a message through. At least they wouldn't feel like there's no pushback, there's no ramifications. Because right now we're just we aren't even acknowledged. I mean, imagine the disrespect. Imagine if, you and I were in a room together and I didn't even acknowledge you. But we still keep coming back like puppy dogs. I mean, something has to give. I think this is the breaking point. now we're halfway through Trump's presidency, and like we were discussing earlier, we thought maybe, okay, maybe something's going to go on here. Let's wait and see. But so far, not really. Like, what has he done for the population that voted him? What has he done for the people who risked their relationships with family members and friends, lost friends and family members, uh, lost job prospects, lost business prospects? What is he doing for those people in the Rust Belt?
Yeah, the people with MAGA hats who get dragged off of planes or stuff thrown in their faces.
Yeah, he's the president, and that's happening. Or
The
people like us have to be, or fearing censorship and
the
shadow banning all the
Antifa
time.
terrorists. I mean, what has actually happened to them? It seems like all that's happened is that the reporting of Antifa and their, you know, you can't even call them journalists, a lot of these people, but their whole job is to go out and dox people and get them fired. And
Right.
This was used by the FBI to, criminalize or punish and convict the Ram fellows.
Yep.
So which side is our government on? I mean, the government is clearly not on our side, and I don't know if the president is, but he's certainly not standing up to he's not pushing back against the people who are opposing us, which means that he's not with us, really.
Yeah, he had both houses for the first 2 years of his presidency. And like I said, if there's some kind of trump card, pardon the pun, that he's going to pull at the end, then great. That'll be more wind at our back. But I mean, this has all been building up for the last few years. As I said, he showed the fractures and exposed what is happening in the country, even when he announced his presidency and began talking about immigration. So you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. At least this is becoming part of the popular lexicon. And as I said earlier, that may well end up being what his legacy is, that he just blew this all open in terms of the Overton window, public discourse, people not being afraid to express these views a little bit. It's happening more and more, tearing down the regime's power, people with PC, that kind of mental cage that's put over people, the legitimacy of the media, certainly, the trust in the media. So, I mean, I'm not saying anything new. This is stuff that people get up and talk about every day. But just as summarizing, it right now, that's what it seems like his legacy is going to be, and that's fine. I'm just saying we now have to take the mood of the country and where some people are and keep pulling it in this direction where we can advocate for ourselves.
Well, let's wrap up the political discussion. It's funny, like we both said we're not political talkers, but we talked for an hour. Well, not an hour, half hour, but about politics. It's I did want to focus actually on your website. You've got a section on there about beautiful things. And as an artist, I was intrigued, and quite a few Russian painters actually on there. So is there a particular reason that you think Russian painters are just the contemporary Russian painters even are some of the best out there, or why you're drawn to them?
Well, yeah, just so the audience knows, so the whole point of that page on my site, I knew immediately when I was thinking about my site that I wanted something like this, was to show contemporary artists. It's mostly visual artists, mostly painters, but there are some links to other poets, because I write a little poetry myself, and music, but it's mostly you scroll down the page and you see some paintings, but this is the key. It's contemporary. I mean, if you want to see beautiful Western art, my page, you scroll my page and you'd be scrolling for hours and hours and hours. You could just, take an art history class or go to the great museums. The whole idea was to show people that there are contemporary painters and other kinds of artists who are doing things that are wholesome, that are well executed, that have that order and that balance and that skill, and that have some more overtly than others, but all of them have the spirit of Western civilization in it. And it's something that Again, I don't know these artists. I'm not speaking for them. I don't have any affiliation with them, so I don't know what their feelings would be. But you can certainly look at those paintings and feel a sense of pride in the white peoples of the world, their spirit, their aesthetic, and the different ways that manifests. So that's the key, contemporary painters. It just so happened, I wasn't looking for them, but yes, it just so happened that a lot of these painters that I found so far are Russian. And some of them, as you'll see, are painting these images of this Slavic past that is a little more, just in tune with nature, something pre-modern, something that gives you the sense of this is a little more pure before some of the ravages of the modern world, the negative aspects of the modern world kind of took hold. And there's a lot that I want to add to it. I've been doing other things, but I do need to add more things to it. And as I add, of course, I'll tweet it out, put it on social media. This is a new addition to the Beautiful Things page. But I want it to be a place to inspire people, to let them know that it's not all degenerate art. It's not all people urinating on canvases. That's not the only thing going on. This is a kind of thing. It's like fanning a flame. There's some artists out there, maybe they're not all in museums. They're not going to be in the Tate Modern in London because the modern art industry, the kinds of people that run it don't think like us. They're not thinking about beauty and order and form and the European spirit. They're totally oriented in a whole different way, of course. But to know that those kinds of artists are out there, and if I can do something to help other people find those kinds of artists, it inspires them to do something beautiful in their own way. If they're a creative person, uh, I wanted to put that out there. I wanted that to be part of my presentation. As for why they're not all of them, of course, but a fair number of them are Eastern and specifically Russian. Of course, there's that whole idea that maybe the interesting side effect of communism is that being behind the Iron Curtain, they weren't affected by some of the modern rot that really came to the fore in the 1960s in the United States after that Cultural Revolution, and then really kicked into high gear with feminism. And they didn't have that over there, and so perhaps by way of that, they were protected, and some of their mindset and their spirit is still a little more in tune with things that are natural and good and beautiful.
Yeah, I really like that about you, is that like you're not super concerned with views and fame. It seems like you you see quality out there, and whether it's completely unrecognized, you're still able to see it. And I think that's kind of a rare gift maybe that you have, and it shows that you are concerned about greatness and about inspiring that in our people. The thing with
Thank you.
art.
That means a lot. And White Student T, the guy who helped me write who mostly wrote the 7 points, is not some big name and it's not some big account.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have 10 followers or a million. If you have something to say, I will help on my platform bring it out. Yeah, absolutely. But thank you for recognizing that. Actually, that means a lot.
Of course, yeah. The thing with art, I was gonna say, and contemporary art, a lot of people will point out that, where are our Michelangelos? And I hear the argument, and there's definitely truth to it, that you need a structure and a society to really propel the great art forward. And so
Yeah, it doesn't come out of nowhere.
yeah,
Even those great individuals need the scaffolding of the
Yes.
people and the culture and knowing where they come from. Yeah.
Yes, but it's still remarkable that we're able to, in this time of degeneracy and stuff, we're able to produce art that is great and that is compelling and speaks to people, and that I think should give people hope.
Yeah.
Because art and politics or culture, they're so intertwined.
It's always there. I mentioned poetry, Matthew Wildermuth and Atop the Cliffs, and I believe he's now going to manage the Atop the Cliffs social media. The Atop the Cliffs is a poetry journal. So if you like that, White Art Collective, we just spoke to Jeff Winston on kind of an impromptu radio show style stream we did Saturday night, and he joined. He was in the audience. It was not planned. He just popped in, ended up talking for 2 hours. Great guy. with the White Art Collective, and he's just starting out, but he's doing his best to bring out different kinds of people.
Have you talked with what's that guy, Traditionalist Western Art?
No, I think I've seen. Does he have a Twitter account? I think I've seen the Twitter
I think
account.
he has a Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are interested in the cultural sphere, and that's really that's what gets under the radar of the logical mind. And I think that is where a ton of work is to be done. I think there's going to be some kind of cultural revolution, and it's going to come from the bottom up. This is one thing I was talking about with Jeff Winston of White Art Collective on that stream I was mentioning Saturday. Is one beautiful thing about this is the regime has painted itself into a corner where, because you can't touch anything that even has whiffs of being pro-white, of being pro-European, pro-Western, we are immune to being corporate sellouts. Can't happen. No one's going to come along and, if you start some kind of publication or if you're a band, you can't sell out. There's no corporation that's going to be like, yeah, we'll give you $1 million to be in our Target ad. If I started a band and I'm known as this kind of YouTuber, no matter how catchy my song is, you think the marketing team behind Target's going to put it in an ad? You think I'm going to be bought out? Like, this has to be organically built around this community of people online around the world. That's extremely exciting to me.
Yeah. And that's why it's, people talk about, oh, you're motivated by hate. There's no way I could do this if I'm just motivated by hate. There's no way I could take the hits financially and to my reputation and stuff. That I could take all these slings and arrows and be motivated by hate. No, only motivation from love for my people is going to spur me on for this, for my family. And
well said. It is pure love. It is, and yes, sometimes this is the thing, is that word love gets messed with. And I have something called Foundations on my website, where it's not at all political, and written somewhat broadly, and that's for a reason. You can show it to people that aren't quite as overtly pro-white or pro-European, but it will show the framework of how I arrived at some of this, and a broad philosophical framework, for lack of a better word. And the last one, and it's definitely the longest one of 9 essays in these Foundations, is on love. And one of the things I say there is that, people think that love is just this syrupy, saccharine parody, that it's just about good feelings. Love is also viciously protects the boundaries of you and your loved ones. That's part of love too, and that is being realistic about life. I said this, I'm sure there's no greater love than between a parent and a child, and if you're the kind of parent that tells your children, that everyone has a spark of the divine in them, and I believe a case can be made for that. I have a spiritual aspect to myself, but you don't let the other shoe drop, and also teach your child that there are a lot of people who, even if they have this spark of divinity, they have this potential for redemption in them, there are a lot of people who there's layers and layers of crap above that. And there are people who will hurt you and not think twice about it. My father used to say, even at a relatively young age to me, he wanted me to be street smart. He said, there are people that will slice your throat and then go have a slice of pizza. They don't have a conscience. They won't think about it. I mean, he was saying things like that to me before I was 10. That's love as well. And anyone that thinks that it's not, it's not the meeting of those two, of course, especially with young children, you want that nurturing and to give them this sense of a home and comfort and family, but also to prepare them for the world. Love is seeing the world, what could be better, of course, but it's also seeing the world as it is right here and right now. You have to be grounded in that sense of reality to be able to navigate the world. If you don't, you're going to be eaten alive by it. So boundaries, this is why I was writing things like that. Boundaries, protecting your family, protecting your nation, is not an antithetical to love. It is part of love. This word love has just been warped and perverted and there's a reason I used saccharin and syrupy. It's the same reason why it's unhealthy for your body when you just extract a chemical from something natural and you combine it with something else you extract from this other element in a lab, and you put those two things together and your body's not used to digesting it that way. That's why fake sugar, lab made sugar and sweetener is worse for you than just eating the sugars in a piece of fruit. You're taking this little part from it, and that's supposed to be ingested as a symbiotic whole with all the other things. You're just taking this little piece of it and you're saying that's the whole thing. And that's philosophically, metaphysically, what these people are doing with terms like love, how the anti-whites and these
love should make you strong,
Yeah.
not weak. And right
lefty
now,
types.
a lot of people adopt this,
So we have to
Valentine.
redefine love too. We're all about more seeing things as they are, and there's an earthy, black and white, salt of the earth kind of aspect to right-wing thinking people. But we also need to be able to speak to those of us like me who, I need to kind of work out the theory. I need to work out the philosophy. And maybe people that go to my site, not everyone's going to need or want to read those foundations articles, but some do. Some write me and they're like, man, this is the kind of thing I've been thinking about. Because this is what the anti-whites do. They make you think that if you're a certain kind of person, and I probably even subconsciously experience this to some degree, if you're a certain kind of person with certain interests, you're a creative person, Matthew, you're an artist, so maybe you've experienced this, then automatically you can't be thinking these kind of right-wing thoughts about proper boundaries, or you can't be thinking certainly about your racial heritage and what that means coming from a line of being of European descent. And you can marry the two.
Yeah, you know what happened to the
they're not
last?
antithetical at all.
You know what happened to the last artist who was a nationalist?
Yeah, well, there are more nationalist artists, like on my Beautiful Things page, but yeah,
Of course.
funny reference.
Well, that is a good note to leave it on. What are you working on right now?
Well, a lot of things. Hopefully you'll be seeing more streaming from me, besides the after party that I do with Jason on his channel, No White Guilt, whether it's on his channel or my channel. Hopefully just going to be doing more kinds of conversations to speak to people a little more on a regular basis. And I take clips from those sometimes and put them on my channel. So there's like little bite-sized clips of them. But all sorts of things. I mean, I don't like to say too much until it's actually happening. I had my first article published on Republic Standard a few days ago, so that was cool. I've been on Countercurrents as well, but first time on Republic Standard. Nice magazine. If you haven't checked it out, that was on the Esquire article. I did a video on that as well. More about the article itself. I know most people focused on the backlash against the article and all the crazy.
Oh, you actually read the article. Wow.
Verified hate. I didn't really talk about the online reaction, and I actually read and diagnosed the actual article. Yeah. So I did a video on that, but there's an article version on Republic Standard. And then I should say there's a big after party anniversary show. Our 1-year anniversary is this Friday. So we're going to have several people come in and out. It's going to be a different kind of show, multiple guests. And so that's this Friday at 4 over on No White Guilt's channel.
Excellent. Yeah. Will there be cocktails?
Yeah. You can definitely make one and drink it while you're talking to us.
There you go.
We encourage that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't encourage too much of that. I'm not really a drinker myself.
Oh,
but
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
A strict Mormon.
Are you? You're Mormon?
Yes.
I
it's similar to the Catholics. Like, they really don't like their top organization, the people. But technically, yes. If there was a traditionalist, there are actually traditionalist Mormon sects. It's not all of them are the Latter-day Saints, which is the big one that most people think of. But you tell somebody you're a traditionalist Mormon, and then they think, oh, you're a polygamist. So,
that's a whole other thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything from me, just for your audience, anyone that's new, I appreciate you listening, whether you're watching now or in the replay. Everything from me, everything I do, always to contact, all social media, it all goes through my site, thegreatorder.com. So if you remember one thing, it's super easy, thegreatorder.com. Everything I do goes through there. That's the umbrella. There's a way to support, so I appreciate you checking that out as well. There's a page with multiple ways to support.
Yeah, links are below there. Well, I'm gonna stay on here and talk about a few things on Twitter, but I think you wanted to jump off, so I'll just
All right.
thank you very much. And
All right, Matthew. Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. It was
I
great.
hope we can talk again
First
soon.
time talking. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have you on the after party at some point too.
Yes, anytime, my friend.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
See ya. Okay. So he is gone. Jared of the Great Order. What a guy, what a guy. I like his takes, you know. He is a ginger, but we can't hold that against him, right? So what was I going to talk? Oh, I wanted to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Because some people have been saying that she is back, she's alive, right? And I don't know if you saw this TMZ thing. I wanted to recognize the guy from the super chat too. Our pretty early on. Where was it? Anyway, I forget his name. I'm not seeing it now, but he said, "Keep up the good work." So whoever that was, should be a way for me to just see the super chats. But oh well, sorry that I didn't get to recognize you. This kind gentleman sent $10, and I thank him very much. It really helps. I've got the Patreon, I've got PayPal and stuff. Don't tell anyone. I'm trying to keep these things. I don't know. Eventually, I might have to get onto Subscribestar. Seems like I might have a better chance of surviving there. But yeah, that's one of these things. We gotta be able to make a living on the internet, and the people make it very hard. Okay, so Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There was this TMZ thing. And they're saying, okay, she's back. She's back. Okay, so she's alive. RBG spotted at airport shuffling along. So let's see if we can play this here.
Hi, Justice Ginsburg. How are you doing? Everyone in America's wondering how you're doing right now.
It's nuts. It's
Just fine.
Just fine? All right. Are you excited about all the success of all the RBG movie?
with a flywheel, one of my concepts.
So she says, I'm fine. And he asks, are you excited by the success of the RBG movie? So I have to say, the best evidence that this is current year, 2019, what is that, current year plus 4? The best evidence is probably the RBG movie, because he talks about success of the RBG movie. And if you look at some of the tweets around this, I think it was Jack Sobiak. I can go try to find that. Shoot. Anyway, some people were comparing her dress or her jacket and everything to a previous TMZ video. Okay, so now it looks, from this video, it appears that Okay, she's back. Why can't I come up with this? It appears that she's back, but then some people were pointing out that her attire looks very similar to a video that TMZ did of her last year in April. And even the flooring, they pointed out, is the same. Well, this is in Reagan Airport, so a lot of people didn't... a lot of people were pointing out the similarities. So obviously she was in Reagan Airport. The question is, was she wearing the same thing as last year? Like the same, literally the same shoes, the same pants. I think I'm almost to it here. We'll pull it up. How you guys doing in the chat? Doing good? Okay, so here's Jack Posobiec tweeted this out, right? Okay, she's alive. And here's that picture. April TMZ 2018 versus you know what this looks, this literally looks like those memes with the Virgin April 2018 versus the Chad February 2019. But it looks very similar. I'm not sure if the scarf is the same. That's in question mark, right? So okay, so maybe the scarf isn't the same. Are the shoes the same? It seems like it. It seems like it. And for those of you who are in Rio Rhinelander or whatever, the reason this matters is because some people speculate that she's dead. They're thinking this is some kind of Weekend at Bernie's type of thing. Weekend at Ruth's. And for a long time, there was just blackout silence from her, and nobody knew where she was. But she's made an appearance. There was one other appearance. She was spotted supposedly in a dark theater where people were watching the RBG movie. Now, my understanding is that the RBG movie came out in May. It was May 4th of last year. That came out in theaters. So, it is... If this was in April, why would that guy be saying, congratulations on your success of the RBG movie? That's a fair question, but I don't know. Like, let's say it is in April. There's going to be a lot of hype around the movie, so it still could be considered success. And it's equally valid to say, why is he saying this a year later, a year after it's released? Are people still talking about this movie? I mean, I didn't see it. It looks terrible. But she didn't want to answer that. Anyway, we can't necessarily determine it from this evidence alone. Yeah, if you guys have theories, let me know. Do you press 1 in the chat if you think RBG is alive. Press 2 if you think RBG is dead. Now here's my tweet. I said I don't believe this footage is from 2019. So her clothing is suspicious, but that's not enough. So I tried to locate the MasterCard ad in the video, and I found some similar style ads. I wasn't able to find this one here, which apparently says catch some air. Okay, and It's not clear from the text, but this is definitely the American Airlines AA Advantage card. And these two here I found from 2016. So December of 2016, we had these two ads in the airport. Or this one was definitely in the airport. I'm not sure if this one was. But I have worked in marketing a little bit, and I know that, yeah, you might use the same concepts from one to the next. Here, some people are saying 1.5 to 1.3. Okay, guys, that's cheating. You have to pick. But yeah, so yeah, this so 2016 were these ads, right? And are they really using the same concept with this red slant that lines up cleverly against the slant of the red on the card? Are they really using that still in 2019 for their ads? I don't know. I can see it if this is in April of 2018. That makes sense. Like a 2-year thing, or not even 2 years. It would be it would be like 15 months. They would have 15 months from one ad to the next. But as it is, it's like 24 months. So what is going on? I wish that I could find this particular advertisement and figure out when it was actually used. But so if any of you guys are like 4chan people with really good investigative skills, this was my little attempt at it. But I think, this is such an important question, right? If people are faking her appearance, that's just as important as the Jussie Smollett hoax, which I didn't follow that too much. I don't know why, it just didn't come up. But I heard the whole time people saying, "Oh, this is a hoax," and it turned out to be a hoax. So I have a similar feeling about this now. It's tough to say, right? A lot of people just... Here, someone says 4chan has such a shitty interface, it turns me off. Okay. I don't really use 4chan myself too much, but there was the whole "He Will Not Divide Us" campaign, and people, I don't know how they did it, man. They had like these. It was just a picture of a sky, and they were able to figure out where this thing is. How do you do that? I mean, there's some really brilliant people out there, so I know if they put their minds to this, some people out there would be able to crack this, right? So this was just my attempt, and, well, I don't know. Is she alive? She says she's feeling fine. She says she's doing just fine. And of course, right, they would want, if this was a conspiracy to cover it up, they would want people to think she's just fine. Although, even in this video, she sounds a little frail. But, why? And I believed this. When I first saw this, I believed it. But then some other people, I read the comments a little more. And now I'm just not so sure. I still require more proof. So I don't know. We'll see. So supposedly she was returning to arguments at the court, right? And so are they able to cover that up as well? I mean, these are closed room meetings, so we don't have any pictures in there. it would be nice if we could just get a simple press conference where RGB comes out and clears everything up and says, hey, I'm alive. Supposedly she does 20 push-ups a day. This is what I heard in that RGB movie. It's like, I don't know if I mean, people, there's the whole foreskin meme. Maybe she's kept alive by the power of the volcano demon. I don't know. But I would feel a lot better if she came out and said, hey, guys, I know I've been absent. I've been sick. But I'm here. You know? Feel me. You can feel my body. I'm flesh and bone. I'm not a robot. Stop with the conspiracy theories, please. So, what else? Yeah, we mentioned No White Guilt, and I do want to plug his book here, which I have, Born Guilty. And as someone, so people should probably read this. I haven't read it yet, but I hear it's good. And I'm not being paid to say that. But yeah, just the cover of the book is very striking. A lot of people have commented on the cover, and as someone who has a newborn who's about the age of the baby there, well, what a scary image, right? But this is what's happening. Literally, we're being branded from the time of our birth with these labels of sexist and racist and homophobe, and it's supposed to imply that we're evil. But no, we cannot give in to that. We must reveal the truth, and the truth is that the people who brand us this way, they're the ones perpetrating evil. The people who allow this to go on are perpetrating evil. I liked the way we ended. We talked about love. Jesse Lee Peterson is someone who came to my mind as someone who talks a lot about love. So, and he was on, speaking of This Week on the Alt-Right, he was on that show. I recommend everyone go watch that show because he goes so far as to say the 14 words. He says we must secure the existence of white people and their children. He says if we lose white people, we lose the world. So I'd love to have Jesse on this show. I mean, it was such a powerful show. It just tears down all of the ideas of like, oh, you're hateful towards black people, right? No, we don't hate black people, but we recognize the realities of race. And we think that separation would be good for both parties, frankly. It's time to take a little time out, right? But Jesse's good. He stands up for the most part. You know what? Let's not go into that because I think I'm going to do a separate show on, taking apart that episode. People seem to like the review episodes that I do. You can check out the one I did last week of the show Spectrum, where they're interviewing white people. Yeah, people in the chat are funny. Beta male. So he's a good character, and I think his heart is in the right place. But I do have some fundamental disagreements with him on some of this stuff. Oddly enough, not the political stuff. Amazing. Amazing. Oddly enough, it's not the political stuff that I have the disagreements with him on. It's more of the philosophical ideas and stuff, so on. So that would be fun. I'll probably just do that show unless I could get him on as a guest. But I think I'll just do the show and maybe send it to him. And definitely, your input is important to me, you guys. Let me know the things that you like. Right now, I've told people that I'm going to try to do the one illustrated philosophy that has just been a staple of my channel the whole way through since I started in December 2015. I like doing that stuff, so I'll probably keep that up. And then I'll probably do a weekly stream because this is a good way to interact with my folk. My fans, especially. I love you guys. Oh, I have another channel too, if you didn't know that, right? Someone mentioned Myth of the 20th Century. That's another good podcast to check out. But yeah, I do have another channel. I go by Matthias Drake. And the things which are a little edgier, you're not going to find on here. And so I'm going to move that to that other channel so that people can go there. Sometimes it gets banned on YouTube altogether, and I just have no choice, in which case you can go to BitChute and find that stuff. So yeah, go subscribe to my alternate channel. It's good. And definitely follow me on Twitter. So I didn't start with any kind of a prayer or scriptures. Yes, a secret channel. There's a secret channel which I don't think it's still in the chat. My friend Mr. Pikachu had posted the other one. But yeah, go subscribe to Jared's channel. Go subscribe to some of these other people that he mentions. No White Guilt. They're all good folks. Subscribe to PewDiePie. Someone says, how are your animation skills? Well, computer animation, I have virtually no skills. But it's something that I'm interested in. I think if I could do a very crude animation, I would do it. But you know what? It just doesn't appeal to me that much. I haven't found the motivation to do the animation to actually learn the skills to do that stuff. And some people take it to the max, right? They don't even use Flash or anything or whatever it's called now. They just they actually do it frame by frame. And so I think that ends up looking better, but it takes a ton of time. If you guys know of Freedom Tunes, he's a bit more libertarian than this channel probably, but he does a great job with animations, these little cartoon things. And he was describing it and just how you have to you have to draw every frame. I don't know if he has help doing this, but it sounds like it's just a ridiculous amount of work. Some people know Emily Yukas. She does animation work. But that's that kind of thing. It's not my style of art. It doesn't mean I won't try my hand at some kind of animation. I think that I could do, if I was just filming it with a camera, I could do something where I take pictures of an object or a person and then have them moving into different positions. And so you can create essentially what looks like a film out of that. So I might try that. There's a speech from Millennial WOS that I really want to create some kind of cool animation. And maybe if I can get my sculpting skills just right, I might be able to put something together there. I think it'd be so cool. But yeah, otherwise I just do recordings of me drawing. I still like, some people call it doodling or illustration. But, so yeah, thank you. I think that was White Baron that asked that question. Thank you for that question. Let me just see if there's any last questions. I guess not. All right. Well, I think it was a good show. I was happy to have Jared on. Finally, talk with him, and I will leave you with scripture reading. So, in the vein of what we talked about earlier, to bring us full circle, the first point of Jared's talk, his 7 points about standing up for white people in politics and being non-apologetic with what we want from people, what we demand. We're not just asking for this politely. These are our demands. And one of them is, frankly, just equality under the law. We want things to be applied fairly to us. We want to have representation. Real representation, not just people who look like us but don't actually name us or advocate for anything that we really want. The Republican Party has been such a joke before Donald Trump. And so things are going to change, and Donald Trump is going to be a first step in that direction. He's not a dictator for life, so you can't expect him to be much more than a first step, right? But in the vein of talking about politics and legal issues, getting caught up in the courts and jailed, and people saying lock him up and throw away the key because he's a white supremacist, we'll turn to Acts 16 verses 25 through 40. But about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's fetters were unfastened. When the jailer woke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself, for we are all here." And he called for lights and rushed in, and trembling with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas and brought them out and said, "Men, what must I do to be saved?" And they said, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all that were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds. And he was baptized at once with all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before them. And he rejoiced with all his household that he had believed in God. But when it was day, the magistrates sent the police, saying, "Let those men go." And the jailer reported the words to Paul, saying, "The magistrates have sent to let you go. Now therefore, come out and go in peace." But Paul said to them, "They have beaten us publicly, uncondemned, men who are Roman citizens, and have thrown us into prison. And do they now cast us out secretly? No, let them come themselves and take us out." The police reported these words to the magistrates, and they were afraid when they heard that they were Roman citizens. So they came and apologized to them, and they took them out and asked them to leave the city. So they went out of the prison and visited Lydia. And when they had seen the brethren, they exhorted them and departed. So there you go. We oftentimes will think, oh, just, I just want to get away from the attacks. That's enough. And so that leads people to go on the defensive. But it's not enough, right? Because we are in the right and we have been unjustly persecuted. And so when people realize, when the elites realize the error of their ways, they're going to try to capitulate a little bit. They're going to say, oh, well, you can have this and you can have that. And we will say no. Because you have treated us unjustly. We will make a spectacle of things to draw attention to our persecution so that it does not happen again and so that things can change. So don't give up your power. Learn the art of the deal. Not just, the cucky stuff that we've seen from the Trump administration, but really the art of the deal and knowing that you have a lot backing you up. You do actually have a lot of leverage, and our biggest leverage is each other. So I got some more people coming in. Chuck Ford, $2. Thanks for doing these streams, Matt. John Sinclair, $2. Yes, thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you again next week.